The 2019 ranks of IndyCar racing continue to swell as a brand new team announced a program for next year's season, a 5-race schedule which includes an attempt to qualify for the 103rd Indianapolis 500. And that team's name is DragonSpeed. And if you don't know who DragonSpeed is, their team ran by an American by the name of Elton Julian, who had some success as a driver in the mid-2000s in the American Le Mans Series. They currently race in the World Endurance Championship in the LMP1 and LMP2 category. In the LMP1 category, which is really the top category at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, they run the SMP chassis. Now, they have purchased a brand new DW12 chassis for this year's IndyCar season. They've got a contract for Chevy engines, and they will be bringing over one of their drivers from the World Endurance Championship, a driver by the name of Ben Hanley. He's a Brit. 5 races will be the schedule for DragonSpeed in the year 2019, with a plan to expand to the full season for next year. They went with a partial season for this year due to WEC commitments. They will race at St. Petersburg, Barber. They will attempt to qualify for the Indy 500, and then they will go on to Road America and Mid-Ohio to close out their season. So let's talk a little bit about DragonSpeed themselves, or a little bit more detail. As I've said, they are an American team, which again is kind of interesting because they really haven't raced a whole lot in the United States. They've come over for a couple of IMSA races, and I believe they're also coming over for the Rolex 24 with a 2-car effort in LMP2. So they come over here sporadically, but there certainly seems to be a commitment from Elton Julian, the team owner, to really expand into the American motorsports market once again, and a lot of his quotes seem to indicate that because IndyCar is swelling so greatly, he wants to come over here and participate. Now, DragonSpeed kind of got a raw deal this year in the World Endurance Championship. I don't think they really got to show what they were capable of. You may remember they had a massive accident just prior to the World Endurance Championship, 6 Hours of Spa, which was the opening round of that championship, in which Pietro Fittipaldi, who was driving for the team, broke both of his legs, and that really put them on the back foot. Then they went to the 24 Hours of Le Mans and were taken out essentially from the race on the first lap when one of the Rebellions ran into one of the Toyotas, and then the front clip off the Rebellion smacked into the DragonSpeed car and essentially eliminated it from competition before they really got a chance to show what they were made of. But I think this is a team that seems to, again, kind of be doing it the right way. They're bringing a brand new driver, which we'll talk about here in just a second, at least to IndyCar racing, and they're doing a lot of the bigger marquee races, and certainly it's going to help because they're doing 2 races leading up to the Indianapolis 500. That's going to help them, assuming they make the race, and we'll talk about that, believe me, here in just a second. That will help them moving forward and being able to learn the ropes kind of slowly, because let's face it, as a new team, and from what I understand, they are doing this by themselves. They're engineering the car themselves. I don't deny that they will be able to do that, or I don't say that they won't be able to do that. Certainly as an LMP1 factory, or not a factory team, but as a team that has to compete against the Toyota factory head-to-head, they have to be able to figure out a brand new car and be able to engineer it. So I think they'll be able to, or they will be capable of doing that in this case. That being said, it's certainly exciting to see them stepping up to the plate, and it was interesting because in a lot of ways, we'd heard Marshall Pruitt over at Racer.com. He had reported this, months ago, and it almost felt like one of those vaporware kind of things where you hear a team say, well, we'd like to do this if we could do X, Y, and Z, and it turns out not Ben Hanley, that's their driver, but Elton Julian was able to actually put this program together, get the car, theoretically at this point, but I have some faith that they will actually get this car onto the grid, and it'll be interesting to see what they can do. Again, it's an American team that not a lot of Americans are particularly familiar with because of the forms of racing they've participated in. Now, someone that pretty much nobody is familiar with is their driver, and what's interesting about all of this is that Ben Hanley is the driver that Elton Julian is incredibly high on. He's their LMP1 hot shoe, so to speak. He's a driver that they feel is their fastest. He's 33 years old. He's from Great Britain. He doesn't have a huge CV in terms of wins. In fact, the real major accomplishment on Ben Hanley's most recent accomplishments really is the second place he finished in the Formula Renault Championship somewhere around, I think, 2008 or 2009. That being said, he has raced against drivers like Sebastian Vettel and some drivers who have some IndyCar experience like Mikhail Loshin and Bertrand Baguette, and he is compared favorably to them. So it's kind of like one of those things. I almost hesitate to make this comparison, but I'm going to make it anyway. DragonSpeed is a lot like Lazier Partners Racing in that they have a driver that they want to put in the series, and they have faith in that driver that this is their guy and they're sticking to him. Now, it's not quite that extreme. It's obviously not a family team. As far as I'm aware, Ben Hanley and Elton Julian are not related. But it is that kind of situation, and I think it's a good situation, by the way, to have a team so high on a driver that they're saying, hey, by hook or by crook, we're putting you in this seat. We think you can run Indy cars and be competitive. And it's kind of cool as well because it kind of bucks the trend of the rookies that we see a lot of times, the kids who've started out karting at 4 years old and have been driving for 14 years by the time they're 18 and they step up to IndyCar right away out of Indy Lights. This is totally different. This is almost the old school. You cut your teeth in Formula Renault and then you go over to the World Endurance Championship and prove that you have some serious talent, and then you come to IndyCar racing when a team has determined that you are the real deal, so to speak. So obviously, DragonSpeed thinks Ben Hanley can do it. We'll see. I think they've chosen a good schedule in terms of Hanley's talents. St. Pete, Barber, Road America, Mid-Ohio, those are the races they're more or less guaranteed to participate in. Again, we'll talk about that because there's some potential that there could be bumping at events that aren't the Indianapolis 500 this year. But obviously that's going to fit into his skill set. That's what he has done his entire career, more or less. I don't know if he's made any oval starts up until this point. And that's kind of where we come to the Indianapolis 500, and actually something that I talked about in the Harding-Steinbrenner thing where we were talking about them switching to Honda. I said this is going to open up a lot of opportunities on the Chevrolet side of things because Honda has taken on such a burden with the amount of engines that they are going to supply for next year's IndyCar season that there's going to be some partial season teams that are going to be able to get in on the Chevy action. And again, last year, the Chevy engine was the one to have. Now, some people have kind of bucked back on me on that one, but it was. Ultimately, they led 80% of the race. All of their cars made the show. It was the Hondas that got bumped. And it seems like, let's say that their engineering is good, and they put a car under Hanley that can do 225, 226 miles an hour with no problem. Remember, they've also got a brand new chassis, so it's not like it's been wrecked, or at least as long as they don't wreck it at St. Petersburg or Barber, they will have an uncrashed chassis that they can go out and learn at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, that being said, I would certainly expect, and I would think, and personally I believe, that they know it's an uphill battle for the Indianapolis 500. It's going to be very difficult to qualify, and especially for a driver with not a lot of oval experience. That being said, we've seen road racers in the past adapt very quickly to especially the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. A lot of drivers say it drives like a 230-mile-an-hour road course. So if Hanley is what Elton Julian says he is, and certainly he's putting a lot of faith in him, there's certainly a potential that he could qualify for the race. That being said, let's look at the broad picture of all of this that has been announced, or the fact that we have the DragonSpeed thing actually came together, which again was like pretty awesome to me because again it was something that I was in my mind kind of thinking I just don't see how this happens. They put it together, they made it happen. Fantastic. And we've got a situation here, especially looking at the fact that they're going to jump in right at St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg may have anywhere between 26 and 29, 30 cars. I mean, that's what we're looking at right now, especially because it's going to be the first race of a new kind of era for IndyCar racing. The first race on NBC, I would assume it's the big NBC, so there's probably going to be a lot of interest sponsorship-wise to kind of speculatively put that toe in the water and see, hey, can this IndyCar thing, is this really on the up and up? And we'll see by the TV numbers, of course, whether or not that works. But we're definitely seeing what will be a major entry at St. Pete. And you look at some other tracks, especially like Mid-Ohio, where there already was some stated concern prior to this announcement that there may not be enough pit stalls to accommodate all of the entries that will show up at Mid-Ohio. And that means there's a potential that there could be bumping at Mid-Ohio. This is the situation we live in now, folks. Speaking of bumping, Indianapolis 500. Some people called me crazy for saying that there may be 40 cars at this year's Indy 500. Well, on the speculative list, that, remember, it wasn't so speculative because it was based on articles that other people had written, and I literally just aggregated the thing together. I did not have DragonSpeed on that. So theoretically, if we're talking about entries here, this is another car onto that list. So we're looking anywhere between, let's say, on the low end of the spectrum, and I mean absolutely bottom of the barrel low, which I don't think it will be, we're looking at somewhere between 36 and 42 cars on the entry list for the 103rd running of the Indianapolis 500. And I think it's going to be closer to that 42 number. I don't think it's actually going to be 42. I think there's some teams like Dry and Reinbold Racing that may reduce to one car for next year, and we might see one of the Andretti teams go back from 7 to 6 cars, from 6 to 5 cars, or however many the Andretti's. There may be one less Andretti next year than there was this year. How about we put it that way? But that being said, with the amount of cars coming in, the 2 McLarens, a potential expansion at Carlin, the potential potential addition of an extra Ganassi car for a Kurt Busch or somebody like that, as well as DragonSpeed coming in. There's so many cars. I think in terms of real numbers, in terms of announced car driver combinations for the Indianapolis 500, it's already at 29 or 30. And that's not counting some of the full season entries that haven't announced drivers yet, like Carlin Racing. There's anywhere between 1 to 3 entries that will come out of that team for the full season. We still don't know anything about that yet. So you could potentially add 3 entries to the full season plus the Indianapolis 500 just from Carlin Racing alone. Juncos Racing wants to for sure do 2 entries at the Indianapolis 500. We saw an article about that recently. I don't remember exactly where it was, but Ricardo Juncos is very, bullish on the fact that they are going to have 2 cars in the Indianapolis 500, or at least on the entry list for next year. So there's 5 cars there. And then we're not even talking about the extra Andretti cars, the extra Coyne cars, the extra McLaren, so many other entries that haven't been announced yet. I think I already just got to 10 right there. So that's 40 cars. I mean, freaking, if you're not planning a trip to Bump Day, you might want to reconsider, because if you thought last year was crazy, I mean, God only knows who could miss the show this year. Wouldn't it be incredible if Fernando got bumped? Wouldn't that be just the biggest shock in the entire world? But I mean, it could happen. And that's what's so great about Indianapolis. I've said this about Bump Day every time I talk about it. It's the last race you have to qualify for on merit. There are no favorites. There are no provisionals. You're either fast enough or you're not. That's going to be excellent. Excellente. Very, very good. So, I mean, a lot of positive news coming out of the IndyCar side of things. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you think I'm full of crap about 40 entries? Because, again, I keep counting and I keep getting to that 40 number, and it's just like, I don't see how it doesn't happen at this point, to be honest with you. I mean, there could be some, like the Bird entry couldn't happen, but regardless, there's going to be some big grids next year in IndyCar racing, and, you know, if you haven't jumped on the bandwagon yet, it might be a good time to, because it seems like things are really, really heading in an upward direction. And hey, Jay Fry was just announced the president of anything and everything in IndyCar racing. So Jay Fry clearly doing a bang-up job running the competition side of the series, and now he'll be running the communications and marketing side. And frankly, that could only be a good thing, right? Because it seems like Jay Fry certainly understands at least one side of the sport. We'll see if he understands the other side. And if NBC does their part in terms of promotion of this sport, this could be a very lucrative year for IndyCar racing. So I'm happy to have you guys along for the ride. It's going to be a fantastic 2019. So just be sure to stay here when we get to talk about all of the IndyCar happenings going on in the year 2019. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Welcome, DragonSpeed, to IndyCar racing. Wish you luck in the next year, and we'll be seeing you at the track. we'll see you as well in the next video.